You have to surrender perfection and just be who you are, and who you are is enough.
Hi, I'm Gracie Mercedes, and welcome back to Not Blank Enough, a podcast about everyday insecurities and triumphs. In this episode, I'm talking with Sazan Hendrix. The Kurdish-American global influencer talks about what it was like to grow up Middle Eastern in suburban Texas, how motherhood has changed her, finding her calling, and her relationship with God. I hope you enjoy this intimate conversation we titled Not Perfect Enough. And if you do enjoy this or any episode, please consider giving us a rate and review on Apple Podcast. I would really appreciate it. Thanks in advance. Hi, Sazan. Welcome to Not Blank Enough.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Congrats on the podcast, boo.
Thank you, boo. It's been so freaking long. It's so good to see your face. I mean, it's been way too long. Sazan and I go way back, early blogger days.
Oh my gosh, to all the blogger events.
Oh my God.
And all of the fun little series that we started, like In the Mix. Remember that?
Oh my God, In the Mix.
You were in the group of like one of the first friends that I made when I came out to LA that first year. It was like you and a handful of other girls. And it's just been so cool to see how we've all just evolved and changed. And I mean, seeing you do the show, it's literally perfect for you. So it's just so cool to see how we've all kind of transformed, right? Since those early days.
Everyone's found their own like niche and like what they're gonna, what they're doing and their own branding and stuff. It's been really cool to see, actually. Everyone's an entrepreneur. Everyone's like kicking ass, really.
I know. Did you ever think that it would turn into this? Our little blogs would turn into like these really fun and exciting, cool opportunities and projects that have now, I feel like, come to life, like a podcast. Are you kidding me? Like, I never would have thought I would have done that. And I'm sure you didn't either. So it's really cool.
It is, and I'm so happy to have you here and to talk because I know a little bit about you and your past, but I don't really know that much about like your upbringing and stuff. So that's usually where we start. So tell me a little bit about your upbringing and where you're from and how you ended up, well, I guess first in LA and then now you're in Austin, right?
Yeah, I'm now in Austin, Texas, so it's gone full circle because I grew up in Texas, but in the Dallas area. Originally, my background is Kurdish, so my family actually came here to America as immigrants. My mom was, I believe, 13 years old. My dad was 18, and so they came to America to escape the Saddam Hussein regime that was going on there. So when they came out here, they really wanted a better life, and they wanted the opportunity to obviously like go to school here because they were still young and hopefully get married here and all that. And it's in America where they met, but it was cool how they both ended up out here for the same reasons, like leaving this really horrible dictatorship regime that was happening in northern Iraq. Fast forward to my parents meeting, and then, they didn't wait very long before they had baby number one. So a year after they got married, they had my sister, and then I was number 3 out of 5. And so, we grew up actually in Nashville, Tennessee, just for a very short amount of time. And then we moved to California. They were just trying to, I guess, figure out like, where is it that we feel like we belong? So there was a lot of that traveling. After they moved to California, surrounded by some of their family too, they decided, you know what? We need to pick up our life and we need to go somewhere where we can really like put our roots. And they really felt called to go to Texas. And so I had been in Dallas really up until the moment I was like 3 years old, until I decided to leave and go chase my dreams in sunny Los Angeles, right after college. So growing up in Texas was really where I, really kind of stayed grounded and where those roots kind of took place.
What was school like in Texas? Like, did you feel like, it's funny because you said your family was moving around trying to kind of figure out where they belong, which is the immigrant story, really, right?
Right.
And so when you're in school now in Texas, a southern state, usually a red state, what was that like?
For me as a kid, I didn't really have like any, I didn't, when you're so young, you don't even really notice anything like that. Like, I didn't feel the pressure at all at the age of 5 when I started kindergarten, for example, feeling like, oh my gosh, I just noticed I look different. than a lot of like the other girls in my class. I mean, I was like, how come nobody else has a mustache in this class? You know what I mean? I was this like hairy little Middle Eastern girl. But, you know, something that my parents really like instilled in us at a very young age was just that, you know, even though we were growing up, we were born and raised in America, there was always the talks, those lectures about, you know, you are Kurdish, like you are growing up in America, you're here in Texas, but you're a Kurdish girl. So do not forget that, like, you're not American. It's kind of like, even though they were proud that we were in America, they did have that fear of like, you know what? We don't want them to lose their sense of identity, because for the Kurdish people and that population, to this day, they are fighting for the freedom of their own land. And when you don't have your own land, you do struggle with identity and the fear of like being just completely kind of wiped off the map. And that's been the terror that has been over the Kurdish people for hundreds of years, like just forever. And my parents just really always stressed that to us. So for me growing up in Texas, everybody was so sweet and so friendly, but I always felt like a little limited with what I could do. So like I didn't really get involved in sports like some of the girls. You know, I didn't do any sleepovers. I wasn't allowed to go over to anybody's house.
Yeah.
It was a very protective kind of upbringing. I can obviously see why my parents felt like they needed to do that, because they probably felt a little guarded and that they were trying to find that place of belonging.
Right.
And there wasn't a lot of Kurdish people right around us. So it was hard to feel like we had that sense of community. So my family and my parents were always like, we have each other and we need to stick together. And so that's kind of where my identity started coming into play, was like, I just want to make my parents happy. I've got to represent the family. And I felt that pressure, right? And it was something that I wanted to take on. So all throughout school growing up, I really just focused on my studies. I didn't have anything like too crazy or wild of stories to share.
Yeah.
I did love I loved choir like in 8th grade. And I remember I begged my parents, I know I haven't been able to like be a part of anything, but can I just like join choir? And I remember they were like, okay. And I remember those overnight competitions where we got to go to like San Antonio. And I used to think, oh my gosh, this is so wild. I've never left the nest, like ever. And so I felt like my parents were always looking out for me, always trying to protect me from the culture of just America, even in Texas where we were. And so it was kind of like I had to kind of find my own identity after a certain point and navigate through, I'm Kurdish, but I'm also embracing the fact that I'm an American and I'm proud to be an American. And I always felt like it was like, it was a constant juggle. It was like one foot I'm trying to be what I feel like my parents want me to be. And then the other foot was like, well, who am I really? And I was just, and that stayed with me all the way through college. And it was just really hard to find that sense of identity when you are trying to make other people happy around you and you're trying to live that perfect, life.
Yeah. It's such a typical, I feel like, immigrant story and I have a similar one, my family being from Dominican Republic. And it's interesting because I love that your family and your mom was like, hey, you're still Kurdish. You're American, but you're Kurdish, and be, proud of those roots is what it sounds like to me, and remember those roots, because I think the Latinx community, there was definitely a time where they were being told, hey, no, don't speak Spanish. Be as American as you can so that you can get ahead, type of thing.
Wow.
Not necessarily like deny your Latinness or, forget about it, but also make sure people know that you're American and you can speak English, because that's how they survived in a sense.
Wow.
Which is crazy, to think that.
It's like trying to fit into a mold. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And that it's so true too, because my parents, they were the same way. It was like they would constantly remind us like, hey, you are Kurdish, do not forget that, but you need to go to school and make sure that you're doing what the other kids are doing and answering questions when the teacher calls upon you and like all this stuff. So it was like, that can really mess with a young kid's head growing up. And I love that we're living in a society today where it really is all about embracing, where you come from and the diversity and celebrating minority cultures. But there was once upon a time where, I would walk into my 2nd grade, 3rd grade class and people would ask me, where are you from? And I'm like, I'm Kurdish and I'm from Kurdistan. And they would literally be like, well, where is that on the map? And I didn't.
Right.
And I was like, well, it's not on the map. It's like, I didn't know how to explain it at that age, but it was, an autonomous region that didn't have a place on the map. And then I would get made fun of. They'd be like, what do you mean you don't have you don't, then you're not Kurdish. It's not on the map. And it got to the point where I started getting really insecure about it. I was kind of shy about telling people that I was Kurdish because I felt like I didn't have all of the right answers, I guess, to their questions, because the truth is like we don't have our place on the map. And for a third grader, how do you really go into that detailed conversation about what your people have been through and how it's a constant struggle and a fight and a battle? It's like, I wasn't going to have those conversations as a third grader. I just wanted to be like, hey, I'm Kurdish. I'm human, just like you. Let's move on with it. But
can we just be friends?
I'm like, can we just play in the playground together? Like, come on now.
And that's so hard, especially because in this country, we learn so little about other countries and we learn so little about geography and what's going on in the rest of the world. It's very American centric here. And so our education, at least. And even in that education, it's very white centric, to be honest. And so, yeah, it's so interesting as a young kid. How do you deal with that? And going back to the theme of the show, at that time, was there a feeling of not blank enough?
Yeah, I'm not American enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the idea of American for me at the time was, I would see all of these beautiful blonde, young white girls in my classes, even all the way and up to high school when we moved into like more of a suburb region, beautiful, blonde American girls. There was just a handful of girls that looked like me. And you start to kind of try to emulate during those years when you're looking for inspiration. This was before YouTube and before, there was really a platform space where you could go and see other girls that look like you. So what do? You try to get inspiration from your community and where you live. And for me, my community was like predominantly a white community. I just was like I overdid it with teasing my hair. I was just like doing the Texas makeup, like glam, full face. I loved hair and makeup, but I didn't necessarily like do it where it accentuated my natural beauty. It was almost like I was trying to look like something that I wasn't. I would go and get spray tans, which I don't know why I would do that because I was already darker than the other girls. But I wanted to join the spray tan party. Yeah, they were all getting spray tans. So I was going to go get spray tans before prom. Like, you just can't help it at such a young, impressionable age to fall into that trap when you don't necessarily appreciate or understand your own identity and you haven't fully come into the becoming of who you are and who you are called to be. And so I did struggle with that. And I think like a lot of young girls have, and you could probably relate too. Didn't we all go through that? Oh
my God, girl. Yeah. And it's why it's so funny because people like to shit on the internet, but honestly, like that's one of the best things about the internet, that you can find the girl out there who looks like you, who is doing the beauty tutorial, who is doing the hair tutorial. I can go on YouTube and find a bazillion videos about natural hair. Like I didn't even know that my hair was curly until I was in my 30s. Wow. Because I was brought up to believe straight is better, because again, you're trying to be like the white girls you see in school and what you see in TV and on magazines and stuff. So I spent my whole life straightening my hair, which is what most Dominican girls, Latin girls do, because that's what we're taught to do. We're taught like the long, straight, wavy hair is beautiful and that the curly, kinky, natural hair is not. And so now that is definitely changing and has changed. But when I was a kid, I'm like, I wanted straight hair. I wanted a smaller nose. I wanted everything that I saw out there that wasn't me. Yeah. Because there wasn't the beautiful girls out there that looked like me. Yeah. Now I think that's changed. Thank God. So young girls now, I think, have so many like celebrities and models and actresses and all these people and influencers to look up to that look like them. And they can be like, oh, okay. Yeah, that girl looks like me. I'm not alone anymore. Right. I don't have to look like this other girl who doesn't look like me.
Yeah, and we don't have to pick ourselves apart because there's things that are different about us, right? Instead of conforming to look like every other girl out there. It's like now we're seeing that the special features and the things that are really unique on a person, that's what stands out. And it's like I look at someone with freckles and I'm like, man, I wish I had freckles like that.
Totally.
It's so beautiful. Whereas, you know, I have friends even growing up that they would pound on the makeup to try to hide their freckles. And it's just, we all have, I think, our own insecurities, regardless of what walk you come from, what your culture is. But I would definitely say for somebody like who, you know, grew up in, you know, an immigrant household where my parents were trying to not only try to conform to the society here, but they were also trying to remind us how important it is to know that we are not American and it's important to embrace your culture and your roots. It's easy to feel like lost. You constantly go back and forth. It's like one day I'm rocking my curls and then in the next day it's like, no, I need to straighten it again. And so I struggled with a lot of that stuff. And even when I moved to LA, it was just like even magnified on a bigger level. Because as you know, going to auditions, doing anything in television, it says it in these scripts, like, you know, please come with your hair freshly washed, blown out, smoothed out, you know, makeup looks this way. I mean, they pick you apart and want you to look a certain way. And so that just magnified it all. And then you reach a certain point, right, where you're like, I'm just going to be myself because that's really...
And that's when you usually book the work.
Yes. I'm just going to be my ratchet self. And like today, for example. Yeah. And I'm just going to embrace it and own it and know that not every day I have to show up like it's a red carpet event, you know? And for me, that turning point came when I became a mother, when I had a daughter, and when I realized that, man, I'm about to raise, hopefully, a strong, independent woman in this world. And the world that we live in today is so different than the world that I grew up in. And so I felt some of that, you know, the heat, the pressure of like, you know, as a mother, I'm going to be her role model. And there's one thing that I remember that my mom never did when I was young. And I didn't acknowledge this until after I had a daughter and we were talking. But I said, you know what, Mom? Not once can I think back and remember a time in my childhood when I saw you looking in the mirror and saying something negative about yourself. I never have to this day heard my mom, doesn't mean that she doesn't have insecurities, but anytime I was around, I never heard my mom pick herself apart when she looked at herself in the mirror. And I thought about that and I said, that really inspires me because when little girls are around you, your kids are around you, maybe it's a niece, whoever, they're listening. They're like sponges. They soak up everything. And I see that even on the day-to-day now that my daughter is like talking and watching me and copying everything I do. And I just was like, I want to be like my mom in that sense. Like, it's so easy to look at myself some days and be like, oh gosh, like I look like a whale. Look at me, 33 weeks pregnant, so uncomfortable. But then I remember, wait, no, I need to remember that there is a young, impressionable girl in this room. And it starts as early as they walk, right? And even before then. And so I want to make that lasting impression for her so that one day she can confidently, you know, walk into motherhood and hopefully do the same thing for her daughter. And it all starts with just setting that intention.
Yeah, well, that's the thing with kids. So much of parenting is just leading by example. And I think a lot of times parents don't always realize that. And like you said, it's so great that you made that realization because it's like you live the life that you hope your children to live. If they see you living a certain type of life, chances are they're going to follow that path or maybe rebel against that path.
Right.
But moving back, so you were in Texas and then you moved to California. So what did you move to LA for? To act originally?
No, girl, heck no. No way. No.
Because you said auditions, but you meant hosting maybe?
Yeah, hosting auditions. So when I came out to LA, I mean, I was so fresh out of college. I thought, you know what? I have my degree in radio, television, film. I am going to get out there and host E! News or one of those entertainment shows at the time, which was poppin'.
Right, of course.
You get out there and then you realize, dang, I am a very small fish in a big old pond. And I ain't in Kansas no more. You know, I was starting to see little success when I was in Dallas because I had a little agent out here. But it's a whole nother story when you go to a scary place like LA where it's like the real deal. And so I quickly started to feel the pressure of, man, man, this is not going to be as easy as I thought it would be. And I wanted to give myself 6 months of really grinding it out before I felt like, okay, maybe I need to go back to the drawing board and figure out something else. And so not that I thought that I was going to get this big job within 6 months, but I needed to figure out a plan because living out in LA is not cheap. You know, my parents were helping support me for a little while. And I just was like, I've got to take this seriously and not waste any time. So those first 6 months really were like, man, I felt like I was in a ring and I was just getting beat up left and right. You'd go to auditions, you'd have little victory wins here and there, but it was like pennies. And I was like, man, this is something I'm so passionate about, but I don't think it's going to actually be able to sustain like my bank account while I'm here.
Right.
I remember, starting to get, I think it was an event that I went to and I met a lot of, I wonder if you were at this event, but it was a lot of bloggers that were there, like Cheryl Luke and a bunch of the girls that were all there. And that was the first time I had made friends, really. I think it was through Devin Dyer, did this little event.
Yeah.
And we went to high school together. So that was great that I had Devin.
Oh, I didn't know you and Devin went to high school.
Yeah, we went to high school. So she was kind of like a sweet friend that I had out here early on in LA. And so I remember going to this event and meeting all of these incredible women who were actually doing their own blogs like full time. And I thought, what? I have a blog. It was just for like portfolio stuff and for fun, but you guys are actually making money? What? And I just was so fascinated by it all. And I quickly started absorbing a lot of that information like a sponge. I did a lot of research. And then I just kind of tucked that to the back. But as I was continuing to pursue hosting and even going to commercial auditions, which were a joke, I just was like, what am I doing? I remember I had a moment where I was crying on the floor in my bathroom. And I was just like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I just feel so defeated. I just feel like I came out here, I packed up my whole life. I left my family, my friends, a good life that I had in Texas because I just knew that there was more for me beyond Texas. And I remember just feeling like, what is happening? And then I really felt a strong calling to actually focus on my blog. Like my blog popped up in my head. And I just thought, I don't want to do that. That's going to be such a longer route. Having to start from scratch and figure that out and build it out. But I felt it so strong. And when I feel things strong in my heart, I have to listen because usually it really is, it's just a God-given instinct. You have to tune into that. And so I did. And honestly, within like a couple of months of really grinding it out now on my blog and then kind of switching the two and putting the hosting in the back burner, I started just discovering so many things about myself that I just couldn't believe. Like I realized, whoa, you can do this. You can be an entrepreneur. You've got the stamina, you're courageous to do this and to put in the effort and the work. You're committed, you're dedicated. My confidence started really going up and I needed that a lot in that season where I just felt like auditions after auditions were just smacking me in the face. And, my blog quickly started to get little opportunities here and there. And at the time it was such a blessing for me because I thought, wait, this is my own thing. I'm getting paid for my own thing, not through a company, not through I'm getting hired. And then, I was dating Stevie at the time and it was before we were going to get married. And I just said, hey, I need your help. And that's when he came on board and he helped me and we grinded it out. We hustled. We reached out to mom and pop shops on Etsy with our little, our media kit and said, if you want the whole package, we'll do a YouTube video. We'll do this. It was like $500 total. And I was getting like brands left and right saying, we'll take it. We'll take the 500. We'll take the, and then I go, Steve, are we like selling ourselves too short? Cause now everybody wants. So it was like I was learning how to be this business woman, but I was doing it alongside, my now husband. And it was so great having that support. Yeah. But look where we are today now. It's like we've got our podcast and then we moved back to Texas, basically.
It's amazing. And it's such a great time you're talking about because I had a similar path where I came here for acting and hosting and kind of fell into blogging because to make money, I was styling on the side. And my hosting agent actually said to me, you have to have like a niche in hosting now. And I was like, well, I'm kind of a stylist. I like fashion. He's like, okay, you're a fashion host. And so that was what made me turn my blog, or like it actually wasn't even a blog, it was just like my website, into a blog. And I had a similar situation where I was like, wait, people are making money by taking photos of themselves. Like, it was like, what's going on here? And I will never forget the first time a brand reached out to me. It was Target to do like a campaign, and I was like,
Target was my first brand too.
Oh my God. That's amazing. And I remember being like, holy shit, like I make money doing this.
I was so
It was
happy
really, really
about
cool.
It is.
I think there's something special about our blogging crew, like the OG bloggers, because now people go into it to make money and they know they can. Whereas for us, I think it was something we did and then the money came later. And so I think that made it a little more
challenging.
I don't know, special in a sense, or organic, or just like this really cool time.
Yeah, we had to just listen to our guts a lot, right? And not knowing if this was even going to last for long, right? And then Instagram and all that came about and it just took off, right? And it's exactly what you said. Nowadays when people start, they're just like, well, I want to know exactly what to do to monetize. And there's so many things out there now, from courses to workshops and things. But we had to kind of walk those invisible steps and really trust the process. And I'm just so glad we did, because I believe that when you really do trust the process in anything that you're going through in life, the hard stuff, especially with adversity, I believe that adversity adds value to your life in some area. You leave that situation or that experience with gained knowledge, or with more physical strength, with just this enlightenment that you wouldn't naturally have had if life was just peachy with butterflies and everything was just handed to you. So I think that our blog journey really kind of gave us the tough skin to now be able to navigate through the crazy world that's constantly evolving in the internet and the content world, right?
Yeah. And then work-wise, we got to work together on things here and there. And then I got to do that access segment, and then you got to do it. And that was like so cool to like see you and doing it as well. And I remember being like, yeah, Sazan would be perfect for this. Like, I was just like because you're so animated and you're so good at hosting. Did you decide at a certain point, like, I don't want to do hosting anymore, I just want to focus on my own stuff?
I totally forgot that we both did that, by the way. That's amazing. It was so fun. It's not that passion ever left the room, but I think the passion for creating my own content, being my own producer, my own editor, in a sense, my own host to this community that I was building and growing online, my heart was just so much more on fire for that. The hosting opportunities definitely came, and like the little TV opportunities. And I remember I did a style segment with Kat Sadler. It was for like one of the Emmys, red carpet, fashion police with influencers kind of thing. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this is E. This is why I had moved to LA in the beginning. And look, a couple of years later, the opportunity came back, right? And I remember sitting in that chair doing the segment and leaving and thinking, you know what, that was really cool, but what I'm doing right now, it really feels so much cooler. Like, I'm so much more content with what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
You think that like, man, my dreams was to work on E and like be a host. And then this other plan develops and happens in your life, and you go for it, and it's just so much better. And that's what it felt like. But I'm glad I got to taste it. It was great tasting it.
And you need that sometimes, because Kat Sadler was one of my guests on this.
I love her.
I love her too. And I said to her when we were talking about hosting a similar thing, I was like, it's so funny, when I got that Access Hollywood gig, and it was a 6-month gig, I did live, Access Hollywood Live and Access Hollywood Regular, and we did these little style segments. And I was like, oh my God, this is like one of the hosting jobs I dreamed of. And again, while it was cool, I was by the end of the 6 months, I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore.
That's how I felt too about the Access Hollywood thing, because it was You're getting up at like 4 a.m.
Yeah, it was a lot of work.
And you have to sell these products. It's like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it was a lot. But I feel you on that. But it's good we got to taste it.
You get to taste it. And I actually had that. I also had this conversation. Liz Hernandez was also on one of my guests, who's also a host. And she was there at the time when we were there. And I was saying to her, I was like, yeah, it's so crazy. And it was at that moment when I realized I really just want to work for myself. That's my passion. It's being my own boss. And so you have such a similar thing where it's like, it's so much more fun and kind of gratifying when you're just doing your own thing. And it's such a blessing to be able to do that.
Yeah. And letting it lead you wherever it goes. It's just like we said at the beginning of this conversation, never in a million years did we think that starting a little blog or going out to chase our dreams in LA would lead us to where we are today, now being able to do some of the passion projects. But, you know, if somebody starting out is asking me like, did you always know that you wanted to have, you know, your own podcast? Or did you always know that you wanted to do this? Or did you always know that you wanted to become a mom even? I would have said no. It's just somewhere along the journey, you just kind of evolve into whoever it is that you need to be in that given season of life and in time. And suddenly it's like you get your wings, right? And you start going for it. And I think way too often in the world that we live in today, even people who haven't launched brands, we can all easily get really obsessed with like our brands or our aesthetics or even the color palette of how our house should look. And we put ourselves in boxes and we don't allow our guards sometimes to just come down and just to see what happens, see what opportunities float by us. And I think we need to always remain open to opportunities and new things that come along the way. It's just really great to see that. For me, like my latest exciting thing that I did, which goes back to my upbringing, it's kind of an emotional story, but I'll try to tell it real quick. You know, about a year ago, I had an opportunity that came about. And this was during a time when I really had taken some time off from, you know, I was thinking about, do I want to launch something like a makeup company? A lot of my girlfriends had been launching things. And I was like, well, I could do that. Or I love, you know, I could do some skincare. You know, I was feeling that like, oh, Sazan, you'd be so good at this. And then you take in all that information from other people. And even though it's great, you feel distracted. And for us in this space, it's not that we don't have any opportunities. It's that there's sometimes too many opportunities. So I was starting to feel like I was really diluting myself and I just needed to hit the reset button. This was pre-COVID. I was just like, I'm not going to worry about feeling like I need to rush to the finish line and launch something because I felt like everyone was launching something around that time. And I just remembered like, I'm just going to wait it out. I'm going to continue to stay in my lane and just see what God brings into my path. Like I always just trust that no matter what, when I'm not worried about it, like the right things will come at the right time. And so this really cool opportunity came about with Walmart to do a hairline with two of their brands, Conair and Scunci, which it's the first time they've ever co-branded with an influencer to basically create their own like hairline with the brand. And I just thought, whoa, like, first of all, that's crazy because I thought about wanting to do something like that, but I didn't want to launch it from the bottom up by myself. I'm not an expert. Right. I just want to be a part of something like that. And so that opportunity came right during that time where I was like, I'm just going to let it all go. We ended up working on it for a year and then it recently launched. But let me tell you, during the process, when I had found out that it was going to be at Walmart, it really did feel like a full circle moment for me because growing up, we grew up in a 3-bedroom apartment when we moved to Dallas when I was like when I was 3 or 4 years old. We had been in this 3-bedroom apartment, 8 people for years. I'm talking like until I was probably a sophomore in high school. And then we moved to the suburbs, but away from Dallas. My mom, actually, she worked at Walmart. So like my mom my dad would work from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. He had his own restaurant business, which was so draining. And then my mom, she was trying to help make ends meet by working the late shifts at Walmart. So from 5:30 p.m. to about 2 a.m., my mom would be working that graveyard shift. And then I remember we weren't in the safest community at the time. She'd cook. She'd be the best mom. She'd like pick us up from school. And then come 5:30, she would leave. And I would always see my mom walk out the door with a smile on her face, and she would go to work at Walmart. She worked there for over like 15 years, and she worked her way up to become like the manager at Walmart. She had all these awards she showed me recently. And she also told me something recently that really tugged at my heart, and it actually made me really emotional. And she said, little did you guys know, when I would walk out that door, she's like, I spent a lot of my lunch breaks crying. And I would cry because she's like, I just felt so guilty that as a mother, I had to leave my kids. You guys sort of had to fend for yourselves. You had to watch after your little brothers. And I couldn't be there most of the time because I was working at Walmart. And she goes, I just remember I'd be crying at Walmart, and I always just sat there, and she'd have these moments with her hand in her head, and she'd just be like, there's a reason for all of this, there's a reason. And one day I hope that I can become that stay-at-home mom. Like that was her dream. And she did. She became that stay-at-home mom, obviously years later. So when I told her about this opportunity, and I ended up telling Walmart about it later on, and I said, my mom really taught me what a work ethic is. And she really poured her heart, blood, sweat, and tears into working her butt off to be able to provide for us. And she did that at Walmart, right? And so my mom, when I told her about this opportunity, she just got so teary-eyed because she said, I always would ask, like, God, like, what's going to happen? Like, what, there has to be a plan and a purpose for this. And I just felt like it was that full circle moment. Like I told her, this is such an opportunity where it's like me and my mom together. I was like, I wouldn't have had this opportunity if it wasn't for you who paved the way for me to know that I can get out there and I can work hard and I can achieve things that seem so unattainable. And so my mom and I have been celebrating this collaboration together, and it's going to be in stores next month. And I want to go to that. I want to surprise her. I want to drive down to Dallas, and I want to go to that Walmart where she worked, which is still there today. And I want to walk into those doors with her, hand in hand.
Oh, I just got chills.
And with my daughter, and to see the incredible things that can happen, right? When you just trust the process. My mom has had to do that. She's had to trust seasons of her life when it just was not pretty. And I've learned that too. And I just can't wait for that moment. And so shout out to my mom who came to America as an immigrant, who probably felt so limited, especially in the workplace, being a woman. Like, as the manager, she had so many stories and things where she felt the pressure, then to actually be somebody who is a product of her and to be able to share this with her. It's just a testament to how things really can come full circle. And it's and it's so great. I love Walmart.
Yeah, that's such a great story. And well, don't let your mom listen to this because this might be out before that happens.
Good thing she's technologically challenged, so she probably wouldn't know how to work it.
So let's talk about now. Okay, so now in adulthood, you have this amazing collaboration going on. You have your podcast, you have your YouTube channel, you have your Instagram, you have your whole online community, you're a mom, you're about to have your second baby, you're married, you have so much going on and all wonderful things. Is there going back to the theme of the show, is there a blank in Sazan's life now that you're feeling? Like, is there anything you're feeling still not blank enough?
It's so hard to answer that question because truthfully, I just feel really for the first time in my life, like I feel like I am enough. And it's taken me a long time to get to this place, always feel like I need to be more. In order to get this opportunity or in order to achieve this goal, I need to be this way. Even when even when we look at something like an Instagram post and we see how it performed and I'm like, I needed to be more like this, or we're always critiquing ourselves. And when I just realized like, you know what, I have everything that I need in front of me and around me to know that like everything that you have right now is enough. It is enough in this season of life to get you where you need to go. It took me a long time to get there. So I'm not blank enough is like, I'm not enough. It's like,
I love that.
I've felt that. That's probably been my biggest struggle. And even as a mom, that's something that now I still have I've wrestled with. There's days where while you're chasing this career and you want to show your daughter like, hey, mama's working hard and I want you to follow my footsteps. I want to be an inspirational source for you. You do feel the pressure too of like, man, it's almost like 6 o'clock today and I didn't really get my teeny time. And it just makes me feel like, any working moms out there, whether you work from home or you work that 9 to 5, you know the feeling of just the guilt of like your kid looking you in the eyes and just being like, Mama, do you want to go play? And it's like, yes, I want to play, but it's like almost your bedtime now, you know?
Yeah.
You know, you constantly struggle with that. It's like,
it's a lot to juggle.
Yeah. Probably going back to the blank word though is probably something that I'm learning to just surrender more and more of is just like that I'm not perfect enough, right? Mm-hmm. That's something that, you know, has come from feeling like, well, I'm not enough. In order to be perfect, you have to be more. You have to be more.
I love that.
I felt that from childhood, you know, obviously, you know, my parents raising us in America, like I had said, I didn't feel American enough because at that time, that's what I thought was perfect. That's what I thought I needed to be. And then going to LA in order to be the perfect host, you know, you felt like you had to be XYZ. And so even as a mom now, I sometimes still struggle with that. It's like, Saz, you don't want to be perfect. Perfection is out of style. But I have to constantly even write it on Post-it notes and put them up in places where I can see that. To just those positive affirmations, like you don't need to be perfect. And we are constantly in a state of performing for like our public audience, for our families and you just have to let that go. You have to surrender perfection and just be who you are, and who you are is enough, you know?
Oh, I love that. I actually got chills when you said that because I do feel like, and I got chills when you said that. And I was also like, holy shit, this is like the 18th or 19th interview and no one has said that. And I think that's kind of crazy because so many times we all struggle with that, like not feeling that we are perfect enough or not doing X, Y, or Z the way it's supposed to be done. And so for you to hit that on the head like that, oh my God.
It was when I was talking and I said it hit me. The word popped up in my head.
And what did I tell you at the beginning of this? I was like, before we actually started the interview, I was like, don't worry, it's going to come to you. It comes to everyone while they're talking. They're like, how do I not feel blank enough? And it's always like,
I know. I love it. You should seriously time like how quickly people can figure out their word. Like it took me probably 40 minutes into it. Like
I love it. Man. I love it.
But it's true. Yeah.
Well, that's great because we're going to call this episode then Not Perfect Enough. The last thing I just want to touch on with you, because I remember us talking about this briefly when we did In the Mix, which is like a freaking million years old YouTube show that you and I and Tay did together, which was so fun. And I remember I was raised Catholic. I went to 12 years of Catholic school. And then after school, I think like I went to church here and there, but then I kind of like lost my connection to the church. I still feel like I'm religious or spiritual, believe in God. But I just remember you talking about your faith and God and how passionate you were about it. And I know you talk about that on your social media and everything. And I'm always in such awe of how much passion and love you have for it. And so I'm curious, was that throughout your whole life you were like that? Were you like raised to be super religious, or was it something that like came later in life?
Yeah, no, I didn't grow up in a religious household at all. And that's when, you know, when I was saying I struggled with a lot of the identity stuff, it really caught up to me when I was in college after going through a breakup, when I just realized, oh my gosh, everything that I feel like I have built up to this point, it just felt like the big bad wolf came and just crashed it all down, right? It's like everything and it was because my foundation of happiness was being built on people. It was on emotions. It was on things. And I didn't realize that until I dove deeper into wanting to just find the perfect foundation, like to build a life on, so that I never had to feel that way again. And when I did, I knew that I could go to that place where you just feel that sense of hope, and you never reach that low place where, I mean, at that time before, I was literally like, I'm so depressed. I don't even want to be living anymore. Like suicidal thoughts. You would never think I would have those thoughts, but I did. And that's where God can meet you, is in your lowest of low. And I met Stevie in college, and it was literally the perfect timing. And he was exactly who God wanted to place into my life in that time, as a friend and as somebody who I could really go to and just ask questions to about God, because he was somebody who grew up just knowing and loving God and expressing how he had this relationship with God. And I just thought, a relationship with God, what does that even mean? Because for a majority of my life, my parents believed in a higher being, and it was just sort of like God is the spectator, and, we're trying to figure out the game of life on our own in the court or whatever, in the field. But then I realized, wait, there is a God out there that I can have a relationship with, that I can actually center myself in, and I can, experience life with and navigate through life with. That sounds too good to be true. But I was so desperate at that time and so depressed. I was like, what do I have to lose? So I literally got saved in college. I remember the night that I prayed. I had been praying my whole life, girl. And I prayed that night and I said, God, I've been praying to you since I was 8 years old, but I've been just praying the same things every night. And that was the first time I broke the chain of like the repetitive prayers, like just like keep my family safe. Please make sure, nobody kills me. Like there's just those simple prayers of like, please protect me out of fear. And then it was that night when I was just like, look, I just want to know if you're even real. Like, if you are, like, reveal yourself to me. Like, I just need to know that you've been there my whole life. And if you have, like, show me who you are. Like, I was so, like, bold with that prayer.
Wow.
But my heart was also very open and I was very vulnerable. So that's when God really has that opportunity, that invitation, is when we're completely guards down, open. That night in my dreams, I literally had a dream, out of body experience. I was in a church and I was like worshiping Jesus's name. And I at the time knew little to nothing about Jesus, about church. I didn't even know what worship was. And then for 2 weeks straight after that, I continued to have these revelational dreams and experiences where I was getting to know who God was. And I would wake up and I would be like, oh my God, what was that? That was incredible. And slowly but surely, the anxiety was being lifted. I felt like the burdens were being lifted. And for the first time in my life, my spirit had come to life. And that's something I had never really tapped into. And so I'm so glad that I went on that journey. And I went and I just, forgetting all the articles out there or what other people were saying, because my parents were not about that life of me following Jesus. I just was like, I'm going straight to the source. I'm going to ask God, who are you? Reveal yourself to me and show me the way. Like, let's see it. And he did. And he's continued to do that in my life. And I think that's why I speak so passionately about God, because that's when I finally knew who I was and who I had been my whole life. And I was just limiting myself because I believed in all of the lies that can come from a place that is not coming from your own voice and from God. It's coming from a dark place. So for 22 years of my life, I was really just like lost, and I felt like I was trying to figure out my identity. And then here comes God along the way, and he's just helped me through the good seasons, the bad seasons, and having him there is just like, it's this available source of, it's, and it's not about, I always say it's not about religion. It's about relationship. And it's like just a question of however much you open your heart to God is how much he can really pour into your heart and reveal to you, what he can do for you. So if we're closed off or we're putting God on a shelf and we're only taking him down when life gets hard, you're not going to get to see the day-to-day beautiful things that he can do in your life to reveal himself and to show up and to help coach you and guide you. I always thought I needed 1 million people on my team, like managers and agents and all of that. And then I realized, man, I've got one of the most incredible guides ever, and that's God. And so I can now tap into a place where it's like, I don't know if I should do that. I'm not at peace about it. And you really tune into that and you listen to it. So that's been a huge part of my journey. And I always share that just because before I knew that I could have a relationship with God, I wish that there was more people talking about it. It was Stevie who actually became that person for me, but I was so hungry for it. And I think nowadays people shy back because they're afraid that maybe, it's going to rub somebody the wrong way, or maybe I want them to believe what I believe. But I just think that, again, that's another lie from the enemy. And it's like, we have to just tune in to what we know is true, what we believe in, whatever it is that you center yourself in and what you believe in. And we need to spread that love and that light to other people because God didn't intend it for us to keep it to ourselves, you know? So yeah, that's kind of my little love story with God. And now I know that I don't need to be perfect, you know?
Yeah.
Thank God for that.
Well, I love that. And I thank you for sharing that. And I think the way you described it is incredible. And that story is incredible with the dreaming every night and just being so open and asking for that and receiving it. It's really special. And I think that is a good point. It really is more about a relationship than a religion. I think sometimes people can get caught up in the religion or the church of it all. Yeah. And really it's about your relationship with God or whatever higher being you believe in.
Yeah. Amen, sister.
Well, Sazan, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. I loved catching up with you and I love talking with you.
Thank you for having me on.
I love you. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, know that you are more than enough. Check the show notes for links and info about today's guest. Follow us on Instagram at NotBlankEnoughPod. This episode was produced during the COVID-19 pandemic of 2020 and recorded remotely. Our show today was produced by Gracie Mercedes and Dave Hill and edited by Douglas Sarine and Colleen Beasley. Not Blank Enough is a Gumption Pictures production.